Good day everybody, my name is Andre du Toit. I'm the African wheat lead for Pannar. I would like to use this opportunity to give you a bit more information on our spring wheat cultivars and give you some more information and feedback in terms of what we offer in terms of the package, growth period and what you can expect from our germplasm. First of all, I would like to just have a quick discussion on terms of our cultivar package and what we have to offer. As you can see, we've got a lot of cultivars and a lot of new cultivars coming through potentially. Currently what we are marketing is the 3497 in a medium long grower, the Pannar 3541 medium grower, and in terms of the short grower, medium short growers is the 3400, and then to complement that is a very short grower 3644. You will see a bit more information about those. What we also have, as you can see, we've got a whole pipeline of new cultivars coming through that we will test extensively. We'll have discussions on those and then the potential replacements. In terms of our breeding strategy and in terms of our marketing strategy, we would like to put the best possible germplasm in a bag and sell only 3 growth periods, so that when you buy a Pannar cultivar in a bag, you know it's the best in that growth period. So that's the philosophy that we're following. That is what we strive for. So when we look at trials and look at possible replacements, it gets tested extensively, and then we can make sure that whatever you buy would be the best in that growth period. In terms of what we have to offer, we would always like the producers to plant at least a package. We would like to have preferably 3 different growth periods planted on your farm. It's not always possible, at least 2 we would recommend. So when you plant early, we would like to focus on the 3497. It's got the best yield potential at that planting date. And then maybe at 60% of your plantings, and then move over to maybe a 40% on the 3541, which is a medium grower. When you move in a bit later in the season and you have to go and start planting there, maybe lose the emphasis a bit more on the 3497, make that a bit less, then move over to a higher percentage of the 3541. And then if you go further, move away from the 3497 as a higher percentage. You can still plant it, it's fine, but lower percentage, more focused on the medium grower, and then move over to the long growers. That is what we intend for farmers to do. In my personal experience, if it's possible, plant all 3 at the same time, even if it's early, medium or late, and I'll show you the results and then we'll have a discussion about that. You don't know what the season's going to be dishing up for you, but we can look at historical data over a lot of locations and on a lot of planting dates and see the consistency. That's what we are aiming for. We want consistency in performance, and that's what we strive for. So we'll have a bit more discussions in terms of these cultivars. This information is available on our website and our brochures, so we can look at the leaf and rust and stem rust resistance. Powdery mildew, obviously, we can have a look at that. And then the big problem is when you look at Fusarium head blight, all the cultivars are acceptable in South Africa, no different from ours. This is an important slide. This is just to show you the planting windows that we do recommend for the different cultivars in different areas. I'm not going to go into detail, but what is prominent here and what we have to look at is the seeding rates. We have reduced our recommended seeding rates for all our cultivars for a specific reason. We'll have discussions about that a bit later. But in terms of our recommendations, is we're looking at a 65 kg to 100 kg seeding rate when you start planting early, obviously 65, and when you move in later in the season, move up to a maximum of 100 kgs per hectare. That'll probably give you a plants per square meter of between 150 and 320, which we think is the optimum, and we'll have a look at the next slide in terms of that. But our germplasm is specifically selected for tillering. And that gives it the best yield potential, and it also protects you against secondary and other factors which we're going to discuss a bit later. But the crux of the matter is lower seeding rates do realize bigger yields in our germplasm especially. So we're going to have a look at that in a discussion in terms of that. Where we got to that seeding rates is when you look at the 150 to 160 plants per square meter, where we think our germplasm is basically at an optimum. When you're looking at the 1,000 grain mass, you can see that it's usually around 37 to 39 grams per 1,000 seeds. And then when you extrapolate that to your 150 to 160 plants per square meter, you can see the ballpark figure is between 62 and 69. That's why the recommendation is 65 kgs per hectare, so you don't have to do those calculations. It's already been done for you. As soon as you move into a later planting, you can start to gradually increase your seeding rates. The reason for that is obviously your season is getting a bit shorter. You don't have the same development time on your germplasm, and you want to compensate that because you won't have the same tillering ability than when you planted early. But a maximum of 100 kgs per hectare, and that's where we get to the 240, 250 plants per square meter area. You can see it stops at about 100 kgs. So that's rule of thumb. That's the easiest way to remember it. Just makes it easier. We don't need to complicate things. We found in many seasons in our breeding program, we select for tillering, and the reason for that was basically initially is to look at farmers that do have supplementary irrigation, not full irrigation. They don't have enough water, most probably out of boreholes. And the fact of the matter is we needed to move to cultivar that's a bit more robust, that can handle periods of not being able to water, or maybe breakages in your equipment like pumps or pivots, and just to mitigate some of the risk that is involved with high-end wheat production under irrigation. What we did find, not because we are very clever, but obviously what happened in the quest to produce cultivars that do have tillering ability, we had some secondary positives that came out of that. One of the cases is 3497 that was planted at 80 kgs per hectare a few years ago. That was right next to a field of 3497 where that was planted at 110 kgs, 120 kgs per hectare. We can see that what happened there was with the late cold, and the past few seasons we do find that we tend to get periods of late cold late in the season that does affect the yields of these cultivars, or most cultivars anyway. Reason for that is if you plant at a higher seeding rate, you only get primary, secondary, and if you're very lucky, a tertiary ear coming out. The development of the wheat plant is basically the same time. The flowering, very short periods between each other. There's no big space. But when we plant at a lower seeding rate, we do find, because we selected for tillering ability, we've got primary, secondary, tertiary, and then late ears coming through. What you can see there is basically you've got a healthy, undamaged ear. This is the same plant. You've got a spikelet that's got almost 100% cold damage, theoretically, obviously not. But you can get cold damage on the tips, on the base, or in the middle, depending on when that ear was flowering. This is exactly the same plant. So what happened was, what we did was we thrashed those ears, and you can see that the difference between the ears' kernel weight is between 1.35 gram up to 4 grams. That's the same plant. What they extrapolate that to yield, what was going to happen was, when you're looking at the whole pivot, the damage was estimated at about 40 to 50% cold damage. That did not extrapolate to yield because the plants were able to recuperate, and then by means of the tillering ability and then compensation within the ear, you can see that not all ears was equally affected, and the plant then has the ability to basically correct itself, and then because the energy is available and it does have the means to by the fact that it's not maturing at the same time, you do get the ability for the plant to compensate, and we did find that. So the cold damage was about 1 tons per hectare on that, not 3 or 4 that was estimated. So we do find that the plant's ability to buffer within itself, within a single cultivar, is extrapolated by the lower seeding rates. Secondary to that, we also found that because there's the less competition in the rows, we don't find lodging to be a problem because the plants don't need to compete for sunlight. You do get a later translocation from the lower leaves of nitrogen because there's still sunlight penetration. That gives you the stay green effect on your plant. That also helps with the yields. And then because the microclimate is different, due to the irrigation, there's a little more aeration. We find that diseases like stem rust, leaf rust, yellow rust is not that severe because there's a bit more aeration and then also sun penetration. So that is secondary stuff that we didn't even think about, but that's what happens when you plant a bit thinner. But the main reason is when you're looking at the tillering capability, your roots also have better time to develop. And the fact of the matter is, then you also got a buffer in terms of your moisture usage. So there's a lot of positives in terms of the lower seeding rates, and that's why we try to adhere to that. Okay, so this is just a slide in terms of when you're looking at optimal fertilization. I'm not going to talk too much in terms of this. This is information that is available basically anywhere, but the crux of the matter is, because you have got a lower seeding rate does not mean you have to fertilize less. So when we're looking at the nitrogen distribution, the rule of thumb is basically 3 times between your plant and your tillering phase. Between tillering and flag leaf, you usually do have application, and then from your flag leaf, you usually have your last fertilization. If you're already on your targets and you want to maybe improve, you don't necessarily have to increase your nitrogen fertilization. You can just maybe increase your intervals. So give less nitrogen at higher interval rates. So you can maybe double that, or even 5 times nitrogen application, or even 6 times. So you do get a more even distribution of your nitrogen, but there's more experts that can give you advice in terms of that from the chemical companies. So we're not going to stand and have a discussion about that for too long. When we get to our cultivar results, we see that over the past few years in the GWK strip trials, the old faithful 3497 is basically the flagship of what we've got in terms of yield performance. It's been like that for many, many years. Last year was no difference. So we can see that in terms of the medium long grower, the go-to would be the 3497. Due to the fact that we do have a bit of late cold coming in well, basically the past 3-4 seasons, we find that a cultivar like 3400 that has got a very short flowering period and then a long or prolonged grain filling period, it actually missed most of those late cold spells, and and that's been reflected in the yield potential. So once again, when we're looking at planting a package, you don't know what the next season will be. So that's why we advocate to at least plant a package. So do growth period differences with a lowered seeding rate. So you've got a buffer between cultivars, between planting dates, and then also between cultivars themselves. So you've got a lot of buffers to mitigate whatever the season's going to keep up with. So in terms of a very short grower, the 3644, one can see most of the trials that's been planted is an early planting date, so it does not suit that cultivar. We have seed available for that cultivar for late plantings, especially because it's early flowering, early maturing. When you compare it directly with 3400, for instance, there's between a week and a half to 2 weeks earlier maturing. So it's something different. So for farmers or for producers that need to have a late planting, end of July, maybe in August, that will be the go-to cultivar in terms of your bulk planting. Then you can also rely on the medium growers. And even 3497, we've seen in the past that it can perform. There's no problem with that, but then when you're looking at your percentages, rather focus on the shorter growers when you do late planting, and when you do early planting, focus on the medium to medium short growers. That's why we have the package available. When we look at the Pannar P3 trials, we've divided up into 2 areas. There was just too many to put on one slide. We do have on the end, we do have basically overall look at what happened in the different areas. But here we've got an opportunity to look at some of the new cultivars coming through. One of the exciting new medium growers is 3555. That's the potential replacement for 3541. The seeding rates was not perfect for the 3555, and even though that was the case, the tillering ability is excellent, and you can see that reflected in the yield, and it is the same with all the other areas. 3555 does really have the potential to compensate extremely well. So we are very excited. We're going to reevaluate it this year as well, and it might be available very soon. So you can see that we looked at the 3644 as well. 3453, medium long grower, it's the potential replacement for 3497. We'll evaluate that a bit further. So we're going to make sure that when we replace a cultivar, it is with germplasm that is really tested better and does perform better. So when we look at the KZN, Eastern Cape and Northern Free State, you can once again see 3555 really shined, extreme high yield potential. despite maybe some germination problems initially. We do have confidence in these two cultivars. 3400, same as in the GWK, in terms of escaping most of the cold damage later in the season. You can see that's why we would still advocate planting a package. 3541 is our medium grower currently. 3497, but because it's later plantings, it's not completely suited, but still, there's a whole package. So it doesn't matter which cultivar you plant from Pannar, you're having the best possible germplasm available, and that's why we advocate plant a package. You can see the new cultivars coming through, 3453, 3644, as mentioned previously, not completely suited for early plantings, even though that is being said, still very high yield potentials. So we are quite confident that we will have a niche market for that cultivar. When we look at the warmer areas, in Mpumalanga and Limpopo, here the 3400 really shines. It's actually quite suited for those areas. We can see that despite the fact that 3497 should have actually a bit colder periods, a bit longer growth period, it actually still is a shining example of what the potential of our germplasm can do in terms of yield. Once again, 3541, that's the whole package, basically. So whatever you plant there, you know that you've got best buffering in terms of whatever might happen in the season, but you still have the best potential for yield. And the new cultivars coming through, that'll be evaluated obviously this year again, so we can have a real look, make sure that when we do make a decision to replace one of those, it will be with the best possible germplasm. Northern Cape, where we find, and same as with the GWK results, is 3400 did extremely well. Like I've explained previously, the cold later did not affect that cultivar that much because it really did finish with flowering, so it was in a filling stage. The cold did not have an effect on the yield potential there too much. Once again, 3497, showstopper, 3541. So if you look at what the yield potentials will be for our cultivars, it's consistent over multiple regions, multiple planting dates, and that's what you want, because you don't know what's going to happen on your farm this year, and that's you've got at least a cultivar package that does perform equally well or at above average whenever it's been planted, wherever and whatever planting date. That's what we really need. So if you look at basically the whole package over all the areas, same story, 3400, the potential 3555 that can replace the 3541, 3497. That's the go-to market cultivars that you can go, and that's what we've got available for the producers. We have some tips on achieving your targeted yields for our cultivars. Basics. So what we're looking is know your soil types, know what your farm is what the potential on your farm is, and then you have to manage your soil accordingly or your farm accordingly. Good crop rotation is always a plus. That helps with disease pressure to release or reduce disease pressures. It's not always possible, but it is preferable. Effective water management. This is where I want to stand for a few seconds, just have a discussion in terms of that. What we recommend is that when you do plant your wheat, is that you will start with a full water table or full profile, and then try to keep the profile as close to field water capacity as possible throughout the season. We all know that's not possible when coming to the end, when it starts to warm up and you can't irrigate properly. That's why it's important to do it in the beginning of the season while the plants are still young, still developing, and you do have the time to absorb the moisture. Obviously, you don't want to overwater, so that has to be managed effectively, and that also saves time, energy and money. So a soil analysis is always essential. There's certain elements that you need to correct if there's any shortages before you start planting, and it's preferably done before planting. You can do it during planting, but preferably before planting. Make sure that your soil is as optimum for your wheat crop as possible. You have to look at good tillage practices. Loosen the soil as much as possible. That helps not only with root development, but also water absorption and the capability for your soil to keep that water available for the plants as you go through the season. But even more important than that is making sure that you've got a firm seed bed that is as homogeneous as possible. that just makes your management throughout the season much better and much easier. So when you're looking at plant quality seed, and this is really basically the crux, when you do plant Pannar certified seed, you do have the added advantage that you do have Kalmanu on our cultivars, so that gives you an added protection to root diseases, and then in the beginning stage to foliar diseases. The big thing is it's all about germination. Because we've got the lower seeding rate, you do want as close to 100% germination as possible, so that you can at least give your season the potential to get to the highest yield potential. So quality seed is essential. The correct planting date, seeding rate, and then also planting depth. Depth is very important. So that's why we've got the package. And like I've explained previously, in terms of the percentages of seed that you're going to plant during the season, within that package vary from when you plant. So that's important to make sure that you do plant the right percentage of cultivar in the package at the correct time. And your seed representative will help you with that. So in terms of seeding depth, the rule of thumb is for irrigation wheat is basically a matchbox that's lying flat on its back. That's basically the depth that you want to plant for optimum development, and that's the go-to. If you can get as close to that as possible, then at least you've done everything right up to that point. Correct planting speed, it might sound silly, but the fact of the matter is, what I mean by that is make sure that you do get the seed in the ground at the correct seeding rate. You don't have spillage of seed, you don't have overseeding or underseeding. And at that point, it's most probably the most important period of your season is putting the seed in contact with the soil and making sure that at that point you've set the table for the optimum yield potential. So make sure that you take your time during the seeding period. Monitoring your crop during the season. If you've done all the previous points, this will be easy. Because when you do have to do your weeding or spray for weeds, or even if there's infection of leaf or stem rust or yellow rust or whatever, maybe mildew, you can do that at the correct time as soon as possible, and then by means of doing that, you will be able to protect the yield potential that you've got in your germplasm. So that brings us to the last point in terms of stop irrigating. This is very important. When you're looking at irrigation wheat, if you've done all your monitoring during the season, you've done your watering, you've tried to keep at field water capacity at all times. When you start at the maturing rate and 50% of your weeds, we're talking about the peduncle, so that's the stem between the ear and the leaf, and the flag leaf. If 50% of your plants is yellowing, that means there's no more translocation of any moisture. At that point, you can actually theoretically stop watering. Usually what happens is everybody waters until everything is completely yellow, and you just give another bit of water just for in case. So if you go within those two norms, we're talking about 75%. So if you have been able to keep up your water and you're at 75% and you take away the water, there should be enough moisture within the ground to make sure that everything matures at the same time. And then at that stage, you will be able to combine harvest quite earlier, at least a week and a half earlier than you would have expected to do that. And you will then protect the seed quality. You will have the best chance, because we're going into the rainy season, to take the crop off before you get any damage in terms of hectare mass or sprouting due to rain. And that's basically the crux of the matter. So in terms of take-home messages for our irrigation package, I would like to maybe just touch on 3 points. First of all, try to plant a package. At least 2 of our cultivars at the same time, preferably 3. Seeding rates, keep it down. Make sure that you do your preparations well to protect the yield potential of your cultivars. And then lastly, monitor your cultivar throughout, or your plantings throughout the season, to make sure that if there's any trouble, you can maybe do adjustments early as possible to protect your yield potential. So from me, thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, please contact your nearest seed representative. Goodbye.